I stood in the doorway, heart pounding, as my daughter-in-law folded my sweater and zipped my suitcase without flinching. "The guest room's for real family now," she said, like I hadn't helped raise her child, like I hadn't called this house home for 6 months. I wasn't just a guest. I was her husband's mother. And now, suddenly, I was being packed away like clutter they'd outgrown. "All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from." I didn't knock. The guest room door creaked as I pushed it open, and there she was, Brittany, kneeling beside the bed, folding one of my sweaters like it belonged to her. Her back was to me, long hair pulled into a lazy ponytail, movements deliberate, too calm, too precise. I blinked at the open suitcase on the bed. Mine, half filled with clothes I'd just washed 2 days ago. My voice caught in my throat. What are you doing?" She didn't flinch, didn't even turn around. "Packing your things," she said quietly. "Susan's staying over. The room's for real family now." I just stood there. My bare feet sank into the carpet, but my chest went hollow. "Real family? What are you talking about?" I laughed, but it came out thin. "Susan's your cousin. I've lived here for 6 months. She finally turned, but her eyes never met mine. "I know." That was it. No apology, no explanation. "I thought we were past this," I said. "After everything, after you and Ryan asked me to move in, after I helped with the baby." She cut me off. "Grace, don't make this harder than it is." I stared at her, stunned. My mind scrambled for some reason, something I'd said, something I'd done. But the room was already shrinking around me. "You could have just talked to me," I said, quieter now. "Not whatever this is." Finally, she looked up. For a split second, there was something in her face. Guilt? Resentment? I couldn't tell, but it vanished the moment the door opened behind me. Ryan stepped in, holding his phone like he'd just come from a meeting. "Let's not make this dramatic, okay?" I turned to him. "Is this your idea?" "It's temporary," he said. "Just until Susan's flight gets sorted. The basement's fine. It's just a couple days." "A couple days?" I scoffed. "In the basement. You have a nursery, a home office, 2 guest rooms." "Grace," Brittany said, folding a blouse of mine I hadn't even worn yet. "You were family, for a while. That doesn't mean we owe you a permanent place." I couldn't breathe. The word were hit harder than I expected. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to look at me like I mattered again. But his eyes were already back on his screen. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I gave up my lease. I've been paying for groceries, for diapers, for everything while Brittany was out of work." Brittany zipped the suitcase and stood. "And we appreciated it. We just need the space right now." I felt it before I even knew I was moving, my hand reaching out, grabbing the suitcase off the bed like I could reverse whatever this was. "You can't just do this." But they were already done. The decision had been made long before I walked in. Ryan sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Look, there's clean sheets downstairs. We set it up this morning." I felt like a guest in a house I'd helped hold together, like I'd been dismissed from a job no one warned me I was losing. I nodded slowly. My throat tightened, but I forced the tears back. Not here, not in front of them. "Sure," I said. "I'll take the basement." I walked out with the suitcase in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have. As I reached the top of the basement stairs, I paused. And then I heard Brittany's voice, low but clear from the hallway behind me. "She'll be out by the end of the month. She just doesn't know it yet." I didn't move. The basement door creaked as I opened it, every step down colder than the last. The basement smelled like concrete and old water. There were no windows, just one bare bulb that buzzed faintly above the metal bed frame Ryan must have hauled down here years ago. The mattress was thinner than I remembered, the kind you kept around for emergencies or unwanted guests. The walls were unfinished, gray, with insulation peeking out in some places. Pipes ran low across the ceiling like exposed veins. A small utility shelf had been cleared off, probably for my clothes. I didn't unpack. The suitcase sat in the corner, still zipped. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, but the springs creaked so loud I stood up again. Everything about the room felt temporary, but not in the way Ryan meant. Temporary like when someone's in between homes, or just waiting to be forgotten. Above me, footsteps moved across the ceiling. Laughter followed. Brittany's voice, sharp and high. Then a second voice, Susan's, lighter, younger. I could barely make out the words until I heard Lena's soft question float down through the air vent. "Where's Grandma?" And Brittany's answer, bright and breezy, "Oh, Grandma's just visiting down here for now. She needed a little quiet." I felt my jaw lock. Visiting? That's what I was now? I waited an hour before climbing the stairs. The lights in the kitchen were soft and golden, and the table was already set. Brittany was pouring wine. Ryan sat with Lena beside him, handing her a scoop of mashed potatoes, like nothing had shifted in this house today. Susan, perfect hair, perfect teeth, always barefoot like she owned the place, was already halfway through her glass. I took the seat at the end of the table, the one I used to sit at before Susan ever got here. "So," Susan grinned, slicing into her chicken, "the queen's been dethroned." "Huh?" Everyone chuckled, except Lena, who looked down quickly and reached for her milk. I didn't say anything. I just smiled. A tight one. I focused on the food in front of me. Fork, knife, chew, swallow, stay invisible. The conversation floated around me. Work gossip, preschool applications, how Susan's flight home might get delayed. Weather, right? Brittany laughed at something Ryan said. Susan told a story about some man she met in Miami. I didn't say a word the entire meal. When it was over, they stood. Brittany scooped up Lena, saying something about a new bedtime book. Susan refilled her glass and wandered into the living room. Ryan brushed crumbs off his pants and reached for his phone. Like always. I started gathering plates. No one offered to help. By the time I was standing at the sink, the clinking of forks and glasses in my hands, their voices had blurred again, upstairs, cheerful and distant. The clatter of dishes in warm water was the only thing keeping me grounded. I scrubbed slow, quiet, like I didn't want to wake a sleeping house I no longer belonged to. Then I heard a soft knock. I turned. Ryan was halfway down the basement stairs, leaning against the railing. "I was going to say something earlier, but..." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just a few days. Mom, that's all." I dried my hands on the dish towel. "Sure." He looked relieved, like he thought I might argue, like he wanted the easy way out. "I mean, Susan's just here for the week. Then we'll reset everything." "Of course," I said. He nodded and disappeared up the stairs. I stayed in the kitchen until the clock hit 10:42, then made my way back down. My legs were tired, my chest even more so. The bed didn't look any more welcoming than it had earlier, but at least the light was still on. When I opened the door, Lena was standing there in the middle of the room. She held a pillow in both arms, her favorite one, the soft pink one with stars. "I brought you this," she said quietly. "You can have mine until you get yours back." My throat clenched. I knelt down, eye level with her. "You don't have to do that, baby." "I want to," she said, placing it on the bed. "Mommy says you're just visiting, but I don't want you to go." I touched her hair. It was the first time all day someone looked at me like I still mattered. She hugged me tight, then tiptoed back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that small star-covered pillow in my lap. And that's when I noticed it. One of Susan's bags tucked beneath the stairs, still zipped. But it wasn't empty. The turkey came out perfect. Golden, crisp-skinned, resting just long enough before I carved it, quietly, in the kitchen, while everyone else passed around wine in the living room. I'd been up since 6, roasting, basting, timing everything down to the minute. I'd even made Brittany's favorite stuffing, apple sage with sourdough and celery root. The house smelled the way holidays should. Warm, buttery, full of promise. No one asked if I needed help. By the time they drifted into the dining room, the table was already set. China from the top shelf, candles lit, cloth napkins folded the way Brittany used to like them, back when she still noticed those things. "Smells amazing," Susan said, sitting down with a dramatic sigh. She'd done her makeup just for dinner, I could tell. Eyeliner a little too perfect for a family meal. "Don't look at me," she laughed. "All I brought was pie, from that bakery off Larchmont. People wait hours for their pecan." "Oh, I love their pecan," Brittany said, taking a bite of salad like it was suddenly the star of the show. That was so thoughtful. I served the plates in silence, handing around turkey, spooning stuffing. I watched Brittany skip over it entirely. She didn't even glance at it. We'd barely made it through the first round of polite chewing when Susan tilted her head toward Ryan. "You guys ever think about converting that basement?" she asked, like the thought had just occurred to her. "It's got potential. Could be a killer little rental." I didn't look up. I didn't have to. I felt it in the room, the pause that came too late. Brittany sipped her wine. We'd need it cleared out first. My fork froze, halfway to my mouth. I set it down, quietly. Ryan was across from me, eyes on his potatoes like they were the most fascinating thing he'd seen all day. "What?" I said, without meaning to. Brittany didn't answer. Neither did Susan. Ryan cleared his throat. "It's just an idea." "But you'd need it?" "Cleared out," I repeated. Brittany still didn't look at me. "There's so much down there. Stuff no one even uses anymore." "Stuff," I said. "That's what we're calling it now." "Mom," Ryan murmured, warning in his voice. Susan broke the silence. "You could even add a kitchenette, you know. College kid, single professional, someone who wouldn't be around much." Lena stopped chewing. Her little voice cut through the grown-up tension like it didn't belong there, like it hadn't been taught yet to pretend. "Why are you all talking like Grandma's not here?" The room went still. Brittany smiled too quickly, brushing a strand of hair behind Lena's ear. "Sweetie, we're just talking about ideas for the house." "But she's in the basement," Lena said. "That is her stuff." My heart cracked a little, just a hairline fracture, but I felt it. "She's just visiting, remember?" Brittany said gently. Lena looked at me, eyes round and confused. "But Grandma lives here." I wanted to reach across the table and hold her hand, but I didn't move. If I moved, I'd break. "No one's going anywhere," Ryan said, finally looking up. "It's just conversation." But I could already feel the door behind it. Not open yet, but unlocked. They kept eating. I pushed food around my plate, appetite long gone. After dessert, Brittany fussed over Susan's pie like it had saved the meal. She boxed up leftovers for her, wrapped them in foil, and called her a lifesaver. No one mentioned the stuffing, or the yams, or the cornbread I'd baked from scratch. Lena yawned into my shoulder later in the hallway and whispered, "Are they mad at you?" "No, baby," I whispered back. "Just busy." She nodded like she accepted that. Like being ignored was just something that happened when grown-ups were tired. By midnight, I was back in the basement. The pink pillow was still on the bed, right where Lena had left it. I sat down and finally unzipped Susan's forgotten bag from beneath the stairs. Inside, tucked beneath some folded jeans and a half-used bottle of dry shampoo, was a thick folder, mortgage papers, a draft lease agreement, and a printed email chain. Subject line, "Potential tenant options for January Fern." I started writing it all down on the back of a grocery receipt. The list wasn't for anyone else. It wasn't a protest or a plea. It was just for me. Proof? Maybe. A record. Something solid I could point to later if I ever needed to remind myself that I hadn't just been taking up space. Monday, drop off for Lena. Forgot her jacket, ran it back before the bell. Tuesday, Brittany's OB follow-up. Sat with Lena while she napped. Wednesday, groceries, diapers, dog food, paid $112 out of pocket. Again. Thursday, took Lena to the library, cooked, laundry, Brittany's laundry too. Friday, Ryan forgot to pack Lena's lunch. I handled it. Again. I stopped counting after 2 weeks. But I kept writing. There were no receipts for the emotional labor. No tally for the late nights Brittany cried after the miscarriage, or the mornings I woke early to pack her meals before her interviews. No one remembered the loan I gave them when Mike died. Not even an official loan, just money I moved from my own account when the funeral home needed full payment up front. Brittany didn't ask twice. Just texted the bank info and said, "If you can, please." And of course I could. I always could. No one had a problem seeing me when I was useful. I waited until Sunday morning to try and talk to Ryan. He was on the patio, scrolling through Zillow on his iPad, still in pajamas, coffee mug in hand, legs stretched out like nothing was burning beneath the surface. "Do you have a second?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Sure." I waited. He kept scrolling. "I wanted to ask if you and Brittany have talked about what happens next." That made him pause, just long enough to take a breath. "Now's not the time, Mom." I crossed my arms. "Then when is?" His eyes stayed on the screen. "Things are just tense right now." "Tense," I repeated. "Because there are lease agreements upstairs, drafts, in Susan's bag." That got his attention. "You were going through her things." "No, I was moving my suitcase." I looked at him hard. "You put it under the stairs?" Ryan sighed, rubbing his temple like I was the one making this harder than it needed to be. "I'm not accusing you," I said. "I just want to know if you've already decided." He finally looked at me. Britt's just under a lot of pressure. With work and Lena and trying to make space for Susan. "I am space," I said. "I made space for all of you." "I know." "No, I don't think you do." My voice shook then, just a little. Enough for him to glance toward the door, probably hoping Brittany wasn't listening. "Do you remember when you lost your job?" I asked. "And you didn't tell Brittany yet. And I paid the next 2 months on the mortgage so your credit wouldn't take the hit?" "Mom, no. Just answer me. Do you remember that?" He nodded, slow, but he looked like a boy again, caught between shame and the desperate wish to vanish. "And when Lena was sick and you were stuck in Atlanta, who sat up with her all night?" "You did." "Who has never, not once, asked to be paid back for a single thing in this house?" "You haven't." I sat across from him. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice level. So why does it feel like I'm being erased? He didn't answer. The silence stretched. Finally, he said, Brit's just not herself lately. That's not an answer. I'll talk to her. I stood. You already have. As I turned to go back inside, he said quietly, Just give it a little more time. Please. But time wasn't the issue anymore. It was erosion. The slow kind. The kind you only notice when the floor gives way beneath you. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened my phone, pulled up my banking app, and started searching the last 6 months of transfers. Grocery stores, Venmo payments to Brittany, utility bills, gas, Lena's birthday party, a few hotel reservations, one from July, one from August, both charged to my card. Both under Brittany's name, one booked for 2 adults, the next for just one. Different cities, and neither of those weekends had anything to do with Susan. I didn't sleep that night either. By morning, the sun hadn't reached the basement. Not that it ever really did. The light down here was always artificial, always borrowed. I sat on the edge of the bed, the pink pillow in my lap again, staring at the wall. Something about those hotel charges had dug in and wouldn't let go. The folder under Susan's bag had been about the future. Hers, Brittany's. But the past still had weight too. And mine was packed at the bottom of my suitcase, folded into manila envelopes I hadn't looked at in years. I dragged the suitcase out from under the utility shelf and unzipped the lining. Beneath old scarves, expired allergy meds, and Lena's first crayon drawing of a house with too many windows, I found it, a file marked Loan Docs plus House Papers. The envelope was thick, the paper inside stiff from age and disuse. But there it was, Grace Halstead, co-borrower, 3 years ago, just after Mike died and Ryan's hours got slashed. The bank needed a stronger credit profile to approve their refinance. I was the obvious solution. Steady retirement income, no debt. Brittany called me from the car outside the escrow office and said, It's just to help the paperwork. Nothing changes. I remembered signing it at the kitchen table. Before the remodel, before Lena's 2nd birthday, before Brittany started flinching when I walked into a room. I'd never asked questions after that. I flipped through the rest of the papers. Deed of trust, title summary, my name, in bold. Not just a co-signer, a 30% co-owner. I sat there for a long time, feeling the shift beneath my feet. Not anger, not relief. Something colder, like stepping into the part of a river you didn't know was deep. Brittany hadn't said a word about this to Susan. Of that, I was certain. You don't draft new lease agreements for a house partially owned by someone you're trying to push out, unless you're banking on them not remembering they belong. Before lunch, I texted Judith. Judith had been my neighbor back when Ryan was still in middle school. She'd gone back to school in her 50s, became a paralegal, and always had a kind of quiet fire to her. She met me at the coffee shop by the old library, sat across from me with her readers perched low and a legal pad already out. She took one look at the paperwork and frowned. Did you ever sign a quitclaim? She asked. No. She kept flipping. And there's no written agreement about you forfeiting your interest? I shook my head. It was never even brought up. Judith leaned back in her chair. Then they're bluffing. You can't be evicted from something you partially own. Not legally. I exhaled, more instinct than relief. They'd have to buy you out, she said. Formally, through escrow, not on the side. She paused. You want me to send them a letter? No. I closed the folder slowly. Not yet. Because it wasn't time. Not while I was still in the basement, eating last and washing dishes no one thanked me for. If I fired back too soon, Brittany would twist it into aggression. She'd say I was overstepping, undermining, ungrateful. Again, I needed them to show their hand first, and now I had leverage. As I walked back to the house, I passed Susan's rental car in the driveway. She'd parked it close to the garage, probably assuming she had seniority now. She wouldn't be here long. She already felt temporary. But Brittany was building something around her. Clearing space, making room. But the foundation still had my name on it. When I stepped inside, Lena ran to the door. "Grandma, can I show you my new dance?" "Of course, baby." She pulled me toward the living room where Brittany sat cross-legged on the floor with her laptop open, typing something that looked like a spreadsheet. She glanced up, smiled like everything was fine. It was the same smile she gave to neighbors. Polite, thin. "You went out?" she asked casually. "Just for coffee?" She nodded. "We'll need to talk sometime this week. About, timing." I smiled back. "Sure," I said. "I've been meaning to have that conversation too." Then I watched her eyes flicker. Just a moment, like something small and sharp had slid under her skin. Because I wasn't shrinking. Not anymore. I started by sweeping the floor. The broom was old, bristles half worn, but it did the job. Dust had gathered in the corners like it had been waiting for someone to care. I opened the storage bin near the water heater and found an old area rug folded tight in plastic, left over from the upstairs den before Brittany went minimalist. It was still clean, still soft. I rolled it out across the cold concrete and pressed it flat, smoothing the wrinkles out with the side of my foot. It wasn't about comfort. It was about presence, about marking space, even in the basement where the air felt damp and the corners still smelled like rust and time. I cleared the shelf above the small utility table, wiped it down, stacked my books in order. I found a bulb for the standing lamp tucked behind the paint cans and plugged it in. The soft yellow glow cut through the usual flicker of the ceiling light. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my suitcase. Tucked into a soft flannel scarf was a small framed photo of Mike, from the year before he died. His eyes squinting from the sun, half a laugh caught in his mouth. I'd forgotten how young he looked when he wasn't sick. I set the photo on the shelf, and then, for the first time in days, I sat still, without feeling erased. Later, Lena padded down the steps in socked feet, clutching a coloring book under one arm and a puzzle box under the other. "Can I stay down here with you?" she asked. "Of course, baby." We sat on the rug, sorting pieces. She colored a picture of a fox in pink and green, while I fit corners together, slow, methodical. The basement didn't feel warmer exactly, but it stopped feeling like it didn't belong to me. "Grandma," she said softly, crayon in hand, "why don't you just come back upstairs?" I looked at her, that serious face she had when she was thinking harder than she should at her age. "Sometimes," I said gently, "you have to protect your corner, even if it's small." She nodded like she understood. Maybe not fully, but enough to carry it with her. We finished half the puzzle before Brittany called down for dinner. Lena left her coloring book behind. I stayed. That night, Brittany came down with a folded stack of sheets cradled in her arms like a peace offering. She didn't knock, just stepped in like it was still her space, her house, which technically it was, but not completely. "I brought extras," she said, setting them on the shelf. "The draft from the wall can get bad when it rains." She didn't ask how I knew about the draft. I'd lived here longer than Susan had ever visited. I knew the sounds of this house, the whine in the pipes when the upstairs toilet flushed, the pop in the heater just before sunrise. Her tone was cheerful, just slightly off, forced, the kind of pleasant that comes when someone's trying to glide over something sharp. "Thanks," I said, not looking up from the puzzle. She stood there longer than she needed to. I could feel her watching me, taking in the rug, the lamp, the picture of Mike. The light from the bulb gave the room a softness she hadn't expected. "Thanks for understanding," she said finally. "Family dynamics are tricky." I looked up. "No, they're not." Her face tightened. Not anger, just confusion. Like I'd stepped out of my assigned role again and she didn't know where to file it. "I mean," I said, "they can be hard. But tricky implies everyone's playing a game." She didn't respond. I turned back to the puzzle. She stood there another beat, then left, quietly this time. As the door creaked shut behind her, I leaned back and listened to the hum of the house again. It was the same sound it made the night Ryan was born, the same sound it made when Mike came home late from the hospital and lay beside me without speaking. Some drafts don't come from the walls. They come from the people you built everything for. And if you don't seal them up, they carry things away. The invitation never came. Not a word. Not a mention. Just a flurry of movement above me. Chairs scraping, cabinets opening, the clatter of dishes pulled from the top shelf I couldn't reach without a stepladder. Brittany's side of the family was in town. I heard her say it 3 days earlier, on the phone, laughing softly. "Oh, she's still here. Just keeping low these days." She never said my name. By the time I came upstairs, the kitchen was already full. Brittany's mother, her cousin Elise, 2 nieces I barely recognized. They moved through the house like it belonged entirely to them. I didn't ask if they needed help. I just started slicing fruit. Quietly. The kind of slicing you do when your presence needs to feel accidental, like the food just cut itself. I mixed a bowl of strawberries and melon, then slid it to the far side of the island. Brittany didn't acknowledge it. Not directly, but she moved it closer to the spread. That was enough. They ate in the sunroom, white wine in mismatched glasses, mini quiches from the bakery downtown. I stayed on the stairs, halfway down, out of sight, but not out of earshot. I watched them through the wooden railing slats. Brittany's voice lifted easily in the air, warm and social, the way she used to sound around me when we still shared mornings in our pajamas and coffee that tasted like routine. Susan was holding court again, legs curled under her like she was born into the furniture. She sipped from a flute and looked toward the hallway. "Where's Grace?" she asked, far too loud to be accidental. Brittany shrugged. "She's around." Susan smirked. I swear, she must actually enjoy her peace and quiet down there. The group laughed. I didn't move. I went back to the basement and opened my email. No subject line, just a blank draft. $1,800 in groceries over 11 months. $6,000 contributed directly to mortgage and utilities, $2,700 in childcare expenses, $900 in travel expenses, airport pickups, gas for doctor's appointments, $20,300 in miscellaneous reimbursements never repaid. I didn't send it. I just saved it. If this was going to become a negotiation, I wanted my own paper trail. They'd forget, intentionally, conveniently. But numbers had longer memories than people. By late afternoon, the house was quiet again. Plates cleared, laughter spent. Brittany's mother had gone to her hotel. Susan had taken Elise downtown for wine tasting. The living room was empty except for a faint lemon scent from the spray someone used on the counters. I was at the sink again when I heard the steps behind me. Ryan. He stood there, hands in his pockets like he always did when he didn't want to start something. You didn't have to stay down there all day, he said. I didn't turn. I wasn't asked to join. He exhaled. It wasn't intentional. I didn't say it was. He hesitated, then said, You're not being punished. I finally looked up, drying my hands slowly. Then why does it feel like exile? The question hung there between us. Not sharp, not cruel, just true. He shifted. Brittany's trying to keep the peace. At what cost? I asked. His silence was the answer. I know what I signed, I added, and what I didn't. Ryan's shoulders tensed. We're not trying to push you out. No, I said. You're trying to wait me out. I watched that land. He didn't deny it, just nodded slowly, like he didn't want to lie anymore, even if the truth made everything harder. I turned back to the sink. Behind me, he said, I miss how things used to be. I didn't look at him. Then maybe you should have said something while it still mattered. That night, I sat alone at the little table in the basement. Ate leftover quiche with a fork I had to wash twice to get the lemon smell off. I stared at the puzzle Lena and I had finished earlier, sunset over a mountain range, all 500 pieces in place. Except one. The corner. Missing. It was barely 6 a.m. when I started the coffee. No one else was awake. Not even Lena. The house was quiet in that way only early morning can grant. No doors slamming, no steps above my head, no nervous glances cast over half-eaten toast. I brought 2 mugs outside and waited. The backyard hadn't changed much since Mike laid the stones for the patio himself. Still a little uneven near the hydrangeas, still cracked where that one winter storm had frozen the grout. I didn't mind. It was one of the few places left around here that hadn't been remodeled out of its own skin. I heard the back door creak behind me. Ryan stepped out, already dressed, phone in hand. He saw the coffee, saw me, and paused like he might turn around. But he didn't. Figured you'd be up, I said. He sat down across from me, taking the mug I slid his way. No words yet. Just steam rising between us like some kind of fogged truce. I didn't ask you out here to fight, I said. He nodded, but said nothing. I just want to know, honestly and without the dance. Do you want me here? The question landed flat between us. No sharpness, just the weight of it. Ryan stared at the mug. It's not about want. I waited. He shifted in his chair. It's about space. My heart didn't drop. It didn't even flutter. It just paused, like it already knew and was waiting for the words to catch up. I reached into my sweater pocket and pulled out the folded page, the one Judith had highlighted in pink. Grace Halstead, co-borrower. Co-owner, 30% interest. I set it on the table, unfolded it slowly, and turned it toward him. You're talking to me like I'm an intruder in something I helped secure, I said, but I bought this space with you. His eyes didn't move from the page. His hand clenched the mug tighter. I didn't remember, he said after a long beat. I honestly forgot. No, I said. You chose not to remember. There's a difference. He finally looked at me. Please don't make this legal. It wasn't a threat. It was fear. Then make it right. He swallowed. His voice dropped. Britt's stressed out. Susan's in her ear. Things got away from me. You're a grown man. Ryan, things don't get away from grown men. They make choices and pretend they didn't. He flinched. Just slightly, but it was there. I wasn't trying to erase you, he said. I thought it would be temporary. I am temporary to all of you. Until you need something. He opened his mouth, but I kept going. You all keep saying this house is about space, but what you mean is ownership, control, and I gave you both, for years, without conditions, without paperwork. without reminders. I tapped the document once, but this is the one thing I made sure had my name on it. He rubbed his face, shoulders slumped now, the way he used to look after pulling all-nighters in college. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "Respect," I said, "and a seat at the table, not in the corner, not downstairs, not in whispered updates after the fact." Ryan nodded, but I could tell he didn't know what to do with any of it. Not yet. Before he stood, he looked at the paper one more time. "Are you planning to use this against us?" I shook my head. "Not if I don't have to." He nodded again, but slower this time, like something was breaking down in him, quietly, or maybe just waking up. "I'll talk to Brittany," he said. "You've said that before. This time I'll mean it." As he walked back inside, I watched his shoulders, still hunched, still small in ways I'd never seen before. The mug sat where he left it, half full. I reached over and took it. Still warm, but cooling fast. It started with the sound of the door clicking shut. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard it, not the casual swing of the pantry door, not the slam of Lena running in for juice, but the careful kind. The kind of shut that says, "Stay out." I moved slower, my back still to the wall, footsteps soft as I crept up those last few steps. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Not really. But the hallway was still. The air above the basement had that too quiet stillness that happens when people lower their voices for the wrong reasons. The office door was closed. A narrow sliver of light spilled under the frame. I stopped just past the landing. "A buyout is cleaner," Susan was saying. "You don't need the tension. You've got a kid in the house." Brittany's voice followed, lower, harder to hear. I know, but she's not going to agree to a buyout. She's planting roots again." "She's hanging pictures," Ryan said. That one landed harder than I thought it would. "She put a lamp down there, a rug. It's not temporary anymore." There was a pause. "She's still on the deed," Brittany said finally, like the words tasted wrong. "Then get her off," Susan snapped. "Offer her a settlement, assisted housing, something. She can't live here forever. This was never supposed to be permanent." "I don't want to fight," Brittany said. "I just want space." They always came back to that word, space, control, dressed up in softer language. I stood there, not breathing. The same woman who had sobbed in my lap when she couldn't breastfeed now whispered about removing me like I was a blemish on the blueprint. And Ryan, quiet, complicit, sounded more like a bystander than a son. "You've got options," Susan continued. "You can use her age, her health, emotional instability." "She's not unstable," Ryan said, finally. "But if it goes legal, that's how it'll read," Susan replied. "You think a judge wants an elderly co-owner squatting in a basement?" Squatting. I didn't realize my hand had gripped the banister until my knuckles turned white. A door opened down the hall. I turned quickly, quietly retreating 3 steps as Lena rounded the corner. She saw me and stopped, bare feet on the hardwood, eyes still a little puffy from sleep. "Why are they being mean to you?" she asked in a whisper. I felt everything in me tighten. "I heard," she added. "They're talking about you." I knelt, pulled her in close. Her arms circled my neck fast, like she was afraid I'd disappear. "Because I stopped being small," I whispered. Her voice cracked. "I don't want you to leave. I'm not going anywhere, baby." She nodded, pressed her forehead to my shoulder, and for the first time, I meant it. I wasn't leaving, not quietly, not kindly, not as a footnote to their remodel plans. After I got Lena settled with cartoons and cereal, I returned to the basement. I sat at the utility table, the one I'd claimed just last week, and opened my laptop. No more drafts. I typed fast, fingers steady. Subject line, home ownership question, next steps. To Judith C., message, Judith, I'm ready. Let's talk options. Time to make this official. Grace, I hit send. Then I sat back in my chair, stared at the basement ceiling, and listened again. No creaks, no laughter, no doors slamming. Just the slow, humming quiet that comes before something breaks open. I was folding towels when the shouting started. It was faint at first, just voices raised behind a closed door, then the sound of footsteps. Fast, uneven. A door swung open upstairs. Ryan! Brittany's voice, sharp, uncontrolled. I didn't move. I kept folding. 2 more sets of footsteps now, Brittany, Susan, and Ryan trailing behind. I heard a paper slam against something, maybe the kitchen island, maybe the fridge. The pitch of Brittany's voice jumped an octave. You knew she sent this? Then Ryan's voice, lower but tight. I didn't know she'd go through with it. She said she wanted to talk. She served us, Susan snapped. Do you understand that? This is a legal move. They weren't even whispering anymore. I walked up the stairs slowly, calm as if heading to refill my coffee. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, Susan had the letter in her hand. Judith's office logo at the top, formal language beneath it. I knew the contents by heart. Notification of ownership dispute. Intent to file motion for injunction. Request for formal valuation. Brittany turned when she saw me, eyes red. Are you serious? Yes. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're going to drag us into court? I've lived here. I've paid here. I've been quiet, I said evenly. That ends now. You blindsided us, Susan snapped. After everything Brittany's done for you, after she opened her home, I bought this home with them. You're tearing the family apart. I looked at her steady. If silence held us together, it wasn't a family. Susan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Brittany leaned on the island like her legs might give. This wasn't how it was supposed to go, she said, more to herself than to me. We had plans. I know, I said. I heard them. That changed her face, just slightly. The faintest flash of realization and guilt, and maybe fear. You've been spying? She said, voice cracking. No, I said. I live here. I hear things. Ryan was the only one who hadn't spoken. He stood near the pantry, silent and pale, holding the notice in both hands like it might catch fire. Brittany pointed at me. You know what? Maybe this is why we wanted you out. You wait, you listen, and then you attack. I didn't rise to it. I let the words land where they would. You could have just asked us, she continued. We were willing to talk. But now, this? You want to threaten us? I'm not threatening, I said. I'm protecting. Brittany took a breath, then exhaled hard through her nose. Then fine. On principle, you should go. Susan nodded behind her like it was settled. I looked Brittany in the eye. I'll move, I said, when I'm paid. She blinked. Fair market value for 30% of this house, I said. Through escrow, with attorneys, not whispers. You're blackmailing your own son, Susan spat. No, I said. I'm forcing him to remember who helped keep this house when he couldn't. Ryan looked up then, and for the first time in weeks, his face showed something like shame, or maybe just recognition. Brittany stepped back. Her voice dropped, icy and final. You don't belong here anymore. I nodded once. Then make me an offer. No one said anything after that, not for a full 10 seconds. Then Lena's voice floated in from the living room. Mommy, where's Grandma? Brittany turned away fast, wiped at her face. Susan followed her down the hallway without a word. Ryan was left standing there, still holding the letter. He looked at me. "I didn't want this," he said. "I believe you," I replied, "but you let it happen." Then I turned and walked back down the stairs, one slow step at a time, my body calm, my hands steady. I reached the bottom, closed the door behind me, and exhaled. I wasn't just on the deed. Now they knew I knew it. The motel smelled like someone else's yesterday. Faint bleach, stale air, a whisper of old coffee grounds in the hallway. The kind of place people stayed when they were in between something. I didn't mind. There was no upstairs laughter, no conversations behind closed doors that I wasn't invited to. Just a bed, a lamp, and a window that let the sun in without asking questions. I'd paid for the week in cash. No suitcase. Just a duffel, a file folder, and my good coat. I brought the framed photo of Mike with me, wrapped in an old sweater. He sat now on the nightstand, still squinting into the sun, still laughing at something I never heard. Before I left, I stood in the kitchen and wrote the note. Taking time, not running. Grace. I stuck it to the fridge with Lena's magnet, the one shaped like a peach from a Georgia trip she wouldn't remember, but I never forgot. The house was empty when I left. Quiet as a tomb. I didn't bother to say goodbye. That wasn't what this was. I wasn't leaving in protest. I wasn't storming out. I was creating space for something else, something overdue. My meeting with Judith was short. She'd already filed the initial documents. A hearing would be scheduled within 6 weeks. In the meantime, we'd request an independent appraisal of the house. No more hallway whisper math. Just numbers. Facts. "She's going to call you," Judith said. "Probably cry." "I'm not answering." "Good," she said. "That's a good start." I sat with her another 10 minutes, mostly quiet. Mostly thinking about the phrase Brittany had used over and over again. It's just about space. Well, now they had it. Back at the motel, I stretched across the bed, stared at the water stain on the ceiling, and let the quiet in. It wasn't the same kind of quiet as the basement. That had always felt like something waiting to collapse. This was clean. Empty? Yes. But mine. I ignored Ryan's first text, then the second. Then the one that came at 2 a.m., just a single word, "Please." Brittany didn't call. I didn't expect her to. The motel's complimentary breakfast came in plastic wrappers, coffee in styrofoam. Still, I made a habit of taking 2 muffins and saving one for the afternoon. There was something comforting about that, rationing, planning, preparing for myself instead of everyone else. On the 4th night, my phone buzzed. "Lena, tablet. Are you okay?" It hit me harder than I expected. That small sentence, the spelling correct, the punctuation careful. She must have typed it slowly, the way she did when she didn't want autocorrect to ruin her point. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "Yes, baby." Better than I've been in months. 3 dots bounced on the screen for a full minute before disappearing. No reply. I waited another 10 minutes before turning the phone face down. That night, I sat at the motel desk and started writing. Not a list this time, not an email or a legal memo. Just me. Just thoughts. I wrote about the first time I held Ryan and how he smelled like powder and panic and something I couldn't name. I wrote about Mike fixing that broken patio stone with his bad knee and how he never once complained. I wrote about how Brittany used to braid my hair when we sat on the couch, back when love didn't come with conditions. The motel heater clicked on, loud, rattling, obnoxious. I didn't mind. Because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be somewhere no one else controlled. No one else scheduled. No one else filtered through Susan, or softened through Ryan, or silenced with Brittany's bright smile. I was alone, and finally, not lonely. The email came just after 9. No subject line, just a line of text and an attachment from Judith. "They've made an offer. Call me before you respond." I didn't need to call. I already knew what the number would say, but I opened the attachment anyway, out of principle, out of habit. Out of some last sliver of hope I hadn't quite scraped out of myself yet. $12,000. That was it. No breakdown, no apology, just a flat dollar figure with a footnote that said, "As is, no further negotiation." $12,000. Not even half of what I'd put in. Not a tenth of what I was worth to them before I stopped being convenient. I didn't even feel the sting this time. Not the kind I expected. What washed over me was something colder, familiar. A cousin to grief, but leaner, sharper. Disrespect. That old worn-out feeling I knew too well from years of holding this family together in silence. The feeling of being tolerated when useful, discarded when inconvenient. $12,000. That was the price they'd put on my years, on my presence, on my name still stamped on the deed. The motel room was quiet. My second cup of motel coffee had gone cold. Mike's photo sat on the nightstand, catching a square of sun. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, then I hit delete. Judith called 10 minutes later. "You saw it?" "Yeah," she exhaled. "It's not just low, it's insulting." "I know. They think you're going to fold." "I won't." "You sure?" she asked gently. "I'm sure." Judith paused. "You can win this, Grace. But it's going to get messy, ugly. There's no path through this that's clean." I let that sit in the air a moment before answering. "It already is," I said. She didn't argue. After the call, I left the motel and took a walk past a row of tired storefronts and shuttered laundromats. I ended up in front of a real estate office with sun-bleached flyers in the window. Rentals mostly, studios, one-bedrooms, nothing fancy. I snapped a picture of a place 2 miles from the park. Brick building, first floor, tiny patio, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, affordable, quiet. Mine. I called the number. A tired-sounding woman answered and walked me through the basics. "No pets, no smoking, no parties," she said. "And we usually need proof of income." I explained I had a fixed retirement account, not huge, but stable. I offered to pay 3 months up front, she said. "We can work with that." I filled out the online application in the motel's business center, the printer humming behind me as I uploaded bank statements and a photo ID. No one else was there, just me and the whir of a cheap plastic scanner. That night, Ryan texted. "Ryan, I didn't agree to that number. I didn't even see it before it was sent." Ryan, "Can we talk? Just us?" Ryan, "Please don't go to court. It'll break everything." I didn't reply. Brittany didn't text at all. That was louder. Around midnight, my phone lit up again. "Lena, tablet. Is your new house far away?" I read it 3 times. The spelling was perfect. The punctuation careful. I could picture her sitting on the couch, legs folded under her, tapping out each word like it might be the only one that made it through. I answered, "Not too far. Just mine." 3 blinking dots. Then a pause. "Lena, can I come see it when you're ready?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, baby. When I'm ready." I put the phone face down and looked around the room. Still smelled like someone else's yesterday. Still sterile, still beige, still cheap. But it wasn't the basement. It wasn't borrowed. And in the photo of that tiny apartment, the one with the chipped patio chairs and cracked concrete, I saw something small and wild flicker in my chest. It wasn't pride, it was peace. It started with an email I almost didn't open. Subject line, "Heard you blew up at Thanksgiving." From Erica Cole, Ryan's cousin, the one who posts Bible verses and selfies in the same breath. I stared at it for a moment, coffee in hand, the light from my new kitchen window catching the gold in the countertop I hadn't even noticed when I toured the place. It was quiet. Quiet in the way no house with a child ever really is. I clicked the message. "Hey, Grace, just checking in. Brittany said you left kind of abruptly. She mentioned a big fight over the holiday. Hope you're doing okay. We all miss you." That double exclamation mark at the end felt like an ice pick dipped in sugar. I didn't respond. Not with words. Instead, I opened the folder I kept backed up on 2 drives and 1 hard copy. Scanned PDFs, notarized signatures, county records. The deed, the title, my name. In full. I attached the file, no message, and hit send. Let her chew on that. Because Brittany hadn't just tried to push me out of the house. She was rewriting the entire story now, painting me as unstable, dramatic. The difficult mother-in-law who stormed out mid-turkey because she didn't get her way. She always was better at controlling the room than telling the truth. And I'd let her. For years. But this was different. This was legacy. I hadn't heard from Ryan in days, not since the late-night texts. Not since I ignored his apologies by ellipsis. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon as I watered the rosemary plant I'd bought at the farmer's market, there was a knock. Not loud. Just 2 soft raps. I looked through the peephole and saw him, standing there in jeans and a button-down, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. No car in sight. He must have parked around the corner. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He looked up. "Hi." "Hi. I didn't call first. You didn't need to." We stood there a moment longer, neither of us moving. "I brought something," he said, reaching into the tote bag slung over his shoulder. He pulled out a Tupperware container. Chili. His recipe. The one I'd taught him, the one he made when Brittany was too tired to cook in the early days of the baby. I took it. Warm, still. He'd brought it straight from the stove. "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. We sat at the small dining table by the window. I didn't offer drinks. He didn't ask. He looked around. "It's nice. It's mine." He nodded. A long pause, then, "I didn't protect you." I didn't say anything. "I failed," he added, voice lower. Not rehearsed this time, just raw. I looked at him, not angry, not triumphant. "No," I said. "You avoided." He didn't fight me on it. "Brittany's telling people I blew up at Thanksgiving," I said. "I know. And she's scared. Not right. Just scared. She rewrote it. She's rewriting all of it." We sat with that truth for a moment. He rubbed the back of his neck like he used to when he was 6 and caught lying about brushing his teeth. "I didn't know she sent the offer," he said. "Doesn't matter now. I should have stopped it." "But you didn't." He looked at me then, really looked. "I don't want it to end like this." "Then help end it differently." He nodded. "Okay." No promises, no grand speeches, but for once no denial either. He stood, glanced around one last time. "Lena misses you." "I know." "She's not rewriting you." I swallowed, throat tight. "That's because I left her the truth." He walked to the door, hand resting on the knob for a second too long. "She told Susan it's already done, that she's moved on." "From what?" He looked back. "You." I nodded once. "Then she can keep going." As the door shut behind him, I sat with the Tupperware container in front of me, still warm. I didn't cry. I didn't feel small. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. I bought the little twin bed off Facebook Marketplace, hauled it home in the back of a borrowed SUV, and dragged it up the stairs myself. The frame creaked, but it held. I layered it with soft things, flannel sheets, the cloud blanket Lena loved, 3 pillows stacked high like a throne. It wasn't a guest room. It was hers. A low bookshelf went against the far wall. I stocked it with her dog-eared chapter books and a few art kits I'd tucked away over the years. Her drawings, sunsets, foxes, one oddly shaped chicken went up with painter's tape along the closet doors. I left a little dish on the nightstand for the plastic jewelry she always forgot to take off before bed. Then I baked cookies, the kind she liked. Soft, almost underdone, heavy on the brown sugar. The apartment smelled like her even before she arrived. The night before her first weekend visit, I lit a candle beside Mike's photo on the windowsill. "We're okay now," I whispered, and I meant it. The settlement arrived on a Thursday, certified envelope, thin but final. The check was tucked between the pages of a formal closure agreement, full payout for my 30%, plus reimbursement for attorney's fees. No note, no apology, just numbers. A transaction to wipe away years of erosion. I sat with it at the kitchen table for a long time, staring not at the amount, but at the handwriting on the envelope. It wasn't Brittany's. It was Ryan's. He'd written my name in careful block letters like he used to on school permission slips. Nothing dramatic, nothing warm. But it was his hand. Judith called 5 minutes later. "We're closed," she said. "It's done." I thanked her, not just for the paperwork, for reminding me I wasn't crazy, or weak, or forgettable. I deposited the check the next morning, quietly, without shaking. Brittany never spoke to me again. No texts, no emails, not even a note tucked into Lena's backpack. She'd rewritten me in her story, and I think for her own survival, she needed that version to hold. That was fine. I didn't need to be in her version anymore. Lena came every other weekend. At first, Brittany waited in the car. Then she sent Ryan. Eventually, Lena came bounding up the stairs alone, backpack dragging, shoes untied, arms out before I even opened the door. "Do you still have the balcony paints?" she asked the second visit. I pulled out the tray, watercolors, brushes, 2 aprons, and we spent the afternoon outside. She painted a sunflower with 5 heads, said it was a family flower. I didn't ask which bloom was me. We made blueberry muffins together the next morning. She added too much vanilla. They were perfect. She asked once, just once, why her mom didn't come up to say hello. I stirred the batter and said, "Sometimes people love quietly, even if it's far away." She nodded like she understood, or like she wanted to. I didn't speak ill of her mother, but I didn't defend her either. By the 3rd visit, Lena called it her room. "My nightlight's still here," she said, flipping the switch on the tiny ceramic fox. "And my brush, and my good socks." She kept them in the bottom drawer, along with a notebook labeled "My Weekend House." I never opened it. That was hers. I stopped checking social media, stopped reading Erica's emails. I let the silence be what it was. Not a punishment, not even a loss, just a shift. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Kitchen just big enough for 2 people to dance clumsily between the fridge and the stove. But it was mine. And when Lena fell asleep on that little twin bed, feet sticking out, blanket half on, a muffin next to her sketchbook, I didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story anymore. I felt home. There was a time I would have apologized for this. Not with words. No, I was too trained for that. But with gestures, with smaller footsteps, quicker chores, and the kind of smile that made people more comfortable pretending they hadn't hurt you. That version of me would have asked permission to feel wronged. She's gone now. I didn't leave the family. I left the silence. The version of family that asked me to erase parts of myself in exchange for staying. That praised me for being helpful, quiet, invisible. There is no award for loyalty paid in self-erasure. No badge for how many things you swallowed just to keep the peace. And even if there were, I wouldn't wear it anymore. The apartment is still small. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a narrow kitchen where you can open the fridge or the oven, but not both. But every square inch is mine. The couch still sags a little on the left, and the faucet leaks if you turn it too hard. I love it, because no one decided this space for me. I chose it. I bought a small wooden filing cabinet last week, the kind with metal tabs and alphabet stickers. Judith had been after me to put things in order, just in case. So I did. I added my will. Lena is the sole beneficiary. She won't get much. Some modest savings, my mother's necklace, the watercolor she painted of 5-headed flowers that still lives on the fridge. But she'll get all the pieces of me I was never allowed to pass down properly. Not through discipline or sacrifice, but through love. The kind that doesn't ask you to disappear. The kind that shows up and stays. I sent Ryan a card a few days after the final check cleared. Just a card. No glitter, no guilt. Just my handwriting. Slow, legible, steady. Thank you for eventually seeing me. That was all I wrote. He hasn't replied yet. He might not. That's okay. Some gestures are meant to be finished, not returned. Brittany didn't acknowledge the check being cashed. She didn't send a thank you, not for the years, the help, or even the closure. But closure doesn't need her signature. It only needed mine. Lena came over again this weekend. She burst through the front door like it was a tradition, her backpack bouncing, shoes untied, arms flung wide before she even got both feet inside. "Do we still have muffins?" she asked. "Only if you help make them," I said. She tied on the apron, her favorite one, the one with handprints from when she was 4, and cracked eggs like a professional. We added too much vanilla again. We always do. After lunch, she painted on the balcony, 2 owls, 1 big, 1 small, on a branch that bent just enough to hold them both. She titled it, "Still Here." She asked me where I was going to hang it. "In your room," I said. "My room?" she teased. "I thought this was your apartment." "It is," I smiled. "But that room isn't a guest room." She grinned. "I know." That night, I read to her from the big armchair, the one I found at a thrift store and reupholstered with fabric I picked just because I liked it. No one told me what matched. No one needed to approve the choice. She leaned against me while I read, her fingers tugging at the edge of the blanket, eyes heavy with sleep. Outside, the city breathed. Lights flickered in other people's windows. Somewhere, dishes clinked in sinks. Laughter echoed faintly down the hall. But here, in this little room that no one gave me permission to make, I had everything I needed. I kissed her forehead as her breathing slowed, and I whispered what I didn't even know I'd been waiting to say. I am not a guest in my life. Not anymore.